on a crystal clear day in North Carolina, I was flying alone in an F-18 Hornet supersonic fighter jet. I was flying at 14,000 feet, Mach 0.97, or just a touch below the speed of sound. I was in perfect formation with my wingman. He's tucked in just 36 inches away from me. I'm the flight lead, and my wingman is the best wingman in the Navy, which is to say that he's the best in the world. Just before I call for our next maneuver, just like a Bugs Bunny cartoon, I started seeing stars. Then I lose my peripheral vision, tunnel vision. You see, our eyes are our most sensitive organ to oxygen deprivation. I didn't know it yet, but my onboard oxygen generating system, or OBOGs, had failed. I was breathing bad air, and I was hypoxic, suffering of lack of oxygen to the brain. Another breath, and I gray out. That means I'm totally conscious, I have all my motor skills, I simply can't see. I said to my wingman, Mordo, I think I'm hypoxic. Just then this wave of euphoria comes over me, and I felt better than I've ever felt in my entire life. What I would imagine it feels like to be stoned. As I told Mordo I was hypoxic, he responded with the correct procedure for that. He told me to pull the green ring. But picture where I am. I'm in this dark, euphoric state, hearing his voice from what sounded like way down the hall. Pull the green ring. I sat there marveling at the brilliance of Mordo's idea. I'm thinking, that guy's so great. I mean, that's what you do when you're hypoxic. You pull the green ring. That's just a little green handle outside my left thigh on my ejection seat that gives me emergency oxygen. Another breath, more euphoric. My flight physiologist and flight surgeon told me I was less than 2 seconds away from losing total consciousness. When again, Mordo's voice came down that dark hallway. I heard him screaming now, Jack, pull the green ring. Jack, come back to me. I need you to pull the green ring. Well, somehow my left middle finger found its way to that green ring and pulled it. A few breaths and I was totally back to normal, totally good to go. Militarily, I outranked Mordo. Within this flight, my position of flight lead is far senior to his position of Dash 2, or the wingman. Everything within our hierarchy says that I tell him what to do and not vice versa. But we're also wingmen. And that is very simply, you watch my back, I watch yours. You see, Mordo has not only the authority, but the responsibility to tell me what to do. To keep me alive, to keep our formation intact, and ultimately to achieve mission success. Regardless of rank, gender, race, experience level, all wingmen are equal. And because of that, Mordo saved my life. It wasn't the first time, nor would it be the last, that were it not for my wingman, I'd be dead. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jack Becker, and 14 years ago, I founded Flight Level Solutions. We're a group of fighter pilots, physicians, and human performance experts with one goal in mind: helping you reduce human error. I'm not going to teach you how to fly an F-18 today, unfortunately, but I'm going to take you on a mission. I'm going to take you on a mission to reduce your mistakes. And I need you to come with me on this mission. I'm going to teach you a process that US fighter pilots and NASA astronauts use every day to achieve peak levels of human performance. And you need to come with me on this mission, because every person in this room is plagued with a problem that you and members of your team, whether you know it or not, have been duplicating and repeating mistakes on the job. Like I said, you may not even know it that you've been doing it. I'm going to teach you how we'll get rid of that today. I'm a combat decorated F-18 pilot, instructor pilot, air show demonstration pilot, but most importantly for our talk today, I was the Navy's chief instructor in this process called CRM, Crew Resource Management. It truly is the method of why US fighter pilots are the best in the world at what we do. A lot more goes into being a fighter pilot than just wearing Ray-Bans, playing beach volleyball with your dog tags on, sitting around a grand piano playing Great Balls of Fire. It's funny, my wife says, do you know how to tell if somebody's a fighter pilot? Just give them a second, they'll tell you. So this process is going to introduce you to how Top Gun pilots perform as the best in the world, but it's also going to show you how we can have collaboration across a wide area of expertise. Sounds a lot like a lot of the organizations in this room today, right? Ogletree Deacons. Bert, that hits home with me right there. But the process helps fighter pilots capture errors in a high-risk, challenging environment. And I'll tell you how we do it. It has this camaraderie that we certainly start in boot camp, right? But this process, once implemented, can help your people develop it rather quickly. It goes along with what Coach Campbell was talking about with this trust and confidence. I have the ultimate trust and confidence in my wingman. And I'll tell you how we develop it. Slowly, through transparency and this buy-in. I don't know if you guys know this, but any acts of heroism you've ever heard in the military aren't done for love of country or for the American flag. Nobody ever jumped on a grenade for their country. Nobody ran into gunfire for the American flag. If you ask any of these heroes why they did that, why they would risk their lives like that, it's for their brothers and sisters in arms with them. It's for the people in their unit. Imagine developing that kind of camaraderie and buy-in with your team. This process helps you do that. Our goal is to capture errors, like I said, so we don't repeat them. But we also are going to capitalize on our successes so we do repeat them. That is the magic of this crew resource management. And it gives us true ownership and buy-in from our people, where they feel valued and an essential role. They have a critical role in our successes. If you're looking to attract, develop, and retain top talent, this method will do it for you. It's a great day to be a fighter pilot. Every day is a great day to be a fighter pilot, and it's a great day to be a part of AIM. I understand that everyone here is very good at what you do. I'm here to help you elevate your performance, get a little bit better. I'm going to draw on some parallels between your line of work and mine. I haven't met everybody in here yet, but I can tell you that that office is a very dynamic, fast-paced, rapidly changing, and sometimes hostile environment. Could we describe your workplace as dynamic, fast-paced, rapidly changing, and maybe sometimes hostile? So I'm always taken aback a moment when people say how dangerous they think my job is. I don't think of it as that way at all. I think my job is very simply unforgiving. I'm going to show you the ejection sequence of an F-18 Hornet, supersonic fighter jet. This pilot is elected to leave the airplane rather rapidly. He's pulled a yellow and black handle between his legs that activates these explosive charges that first get rid of the canopy. That's just so Goose in the back doesn't get killed. Remember, that's how he... But this is a single-seat fighter jet, so the first thing that goes is the canopy. Next, a 30G, or 30 times the force of gravity, booster rocket underneath my seat blasts us out of the cockpit. But what's so remarkable about this photo sequence is the photographer was able to catch the milliseconds of decision-making that went on in this pilot's brain to elect to do a very violent maneuver here before the airplane hit the ground. So my job is decidedly unforgiving. We in naval aviation were forced to get better, kind of aviation-wide with commercial and civilian aviation as well, but naval aviation specifically, we were forced to get better. Last year, we suffered 4 Class Alpha mishaps. That means a destroyed airplane or loss of life. We suffered 4. At the dawn of the jet age in 1954, anybody care to guess what that number was, flying almost the same amount of flight hours? Any guesses? 500, 3,000? I'll show you what that number was. Wait for it. There's a punchline coming. Yeah. We were crashing them faster than we could build them. So we were forced to get better. And by implementing this process, we did so to the tune of a 99% improvement. Then came the mishap at Tenerife. Anybody remember this or seen? There's a great documentary on it. There's all sorts of leading indicators that go into this mishap, but what I want to share with you is just the cliff notes. This was the deadliest accident in aviation history. 2 Boeing 747 jumbo jets collide on the runway, causing 583 fatalities. And the worst thing about it, totally preventable. This one did not have to happen. A bunch of things were leading up to how it went down, but basically Captain Van Zandt was the chief pilot at KLM, Dutch Airlines. And he's pissed off that they're running behind schedule this day. He wants to get his passengers back on schedule. So as he and his co-pilot sitting beside him were waiting their takeoff clearance on the runway in Tenerife, a garbled voice radio transmission comes through. Now I gotta remind you, Captain Van Zandt's ego is bigger than this whole hotel. And this garbled voice radio transmission comes through, and he grabs the throttles and pushes them up to go. The co-pilot, at a time where it wasn't really okay to do this in the mid-70s, actually pulled the throttles back and said, "No, Captain, we don't yet have clearance to take off." I'm thinking, great save, right? Let's get some more information. Well, Captain Van Zandt didn't like being challenged over there, and he basically thumped his chest, and his response to the co-pilot was, "And we go." So we pushed up the throttles, and halfway down the runway in the fog was Pan Am. 583 fatalities. So how costly are mistakes at your job? Maybe not to the tune of 2 wrecked 747s. Even if we're not doing anything high risk, our mistakes are still costing us time or money. After Tenerife, NASA convened a workshop, and they invited the Navy, the Air Force, and a few select airlines. And fortunately for us today, they invited the biggest brains in the world in behavioral psychology. And these smart people came up with the first generation of crew resource management. These interpersonal skills right here of how we can actually capture and mitigate our mistakes. I'm going to go one step further and introduce you to the Top Gun process of supersonic success, and that is implementing CRM in this process of brief, execute, debrief, perfect. This constant cycle of how we do things. And I need to remind you, I can't understand what everybody in this room does, but the strength of this process is its flexibility. I've coached teams that have used this for an 8-hour workday, or for a Monday to Friday work week, or even a 6-month project. Brief, execute, debrief, perfect. And what this does is it starts to instill in our people this relentless pursuit of perfection. And I want you to start thinking about the way you do everything. Even mowing my lawn last weekend, when I finish it, I take a look at it and say, what didn't go real well with that? What did I not do well? What did I do well? How can I do that a little bit better next time? This relentless pursuit of perfection. One of the tools we use in this pursuit is standardization. Taking away all the variables we can from anything that we're doing and removing the variables and doing our jobs the way they're supposed to be done. Standardized. One of the things that we've standardized the best is the feat of landing a supersonic jet aircraft on a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier both day and night. You saw what the numbers were in 1954 when we were doing it with cowboy rules. We're not doing it very well. Now we do it to the reliability that's up to the nuclear code for HRO, or high reliability organizations. We've gotten a lot better at it. This is my view for the last 18 seconds of the flight. I'm striving to land a 50,000-pound airplane on a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, and I have to go through a 14-inch vertical window to do it. If I hit that 14-inch window, my hook will engage the 4 cables strewn across the flight deck, and I'll stop from 170 miles an hour to 0 in 200 feet. It feels very much like a car accident. We're quite often bruised in our shoulders and torsos, our hips, anywhere we're strapped to the airplane, it ends up with bruises. And it's a violent maneuver. But 14 inches too high, and I miss the wires. That's tactically significant and professionally humiliating. I'm going to get yelled at by the captain of the ship and the CAG because the captain of the ship, he or she doesn't like to turn their ship into the wind in order to land all these airplanes because it makes us vulnerable to enemy torpedo attack. So every time I miss the wires, the ship needs to keep steaming into the wind. So it's tactically significant, and I can't overemphasize how professionally humiliating it is. 14 inches too low, well, that's even worse. I don't like being 14 inches too high because it's embarrassing. 14 inches too low results in a ramp strike, which is almost always a class alpha, almost always a fatality. No time to hit the ejection. So 14 inches too low doesn't work either. But I'm going to show you a video of me in the position of wingman number 3, or dash 3, returning to USS Theodore Roosevelt on a beautiful day in the Mediterranean Sea. On this day, my flight lead, her call sign is Sable from the American Gladiators. She leads us in at 600 feet and 600 knots, just under 700 miles an hour. And we're going to come into the ship as fast as we can to land as many airplanes as we can in a short amount of time. We're going to execute a brake maneuver where I turn 90 degrees and pull 7.5 Gs, or 7.5 times my body weight. So now my 200-pound frame feels like it weighs 1,500 pounds. This hurts. It feels like there's an elephant sitting on your chest. So let's watch this. And what I want you to focus on with this video is Sable does a perfect job of bringing us in exactly at 600 feet. But here's the thing. I'm very alone in this cockpit, like I told you. There's no goose in my backseat. But I have a huge peer check, peer evaluation, and peer monitoring going on. There's 15 people on the aircraft carrier whose only role is to help me find that 14-inch window. This is never an instrument approach. It's always 100% visual. 15 people are talking to me with clear voice radio transmissions or beeps and tones in my helmet, or even flashing lights on the aircraft carrier deck, helping me find that 14-inch window because I can't do it alone. That's about as calm as you'll ever see the Mediterranean Sea right there. Not a bad landing, safe and efficient, about 3 inches low. Safely aboard. You'll see the little deviation which caused me to go low right here. Right there, didn't need it. Would have been perfect. Peer check, peer evaluation, and peer monitoring. I need those people to help me find that 14-inch window. And here's the interesting thing. I got to do this again tonight after the sun goes down. So we double the amount of people to 30 people helping me find that 14-inch window. This is what it looks like at night, and there's not that much to see. I will tell you, if you ever meet a naval aviator that says they didn't mind night aircraft carrier landings, they're either lying to you or they're certifiably insane. So, what's exciting about this process that we implement is that everything that you do starts getting better. Your output, productivity, efficiency, safety. Your folks just start doing their jobs better. And this is not academic, it's not theory. We use this at speeds up to Mach 2. Twice the speed of sound when things are happening fast, when we're making life and death decisions. So let's talk about error. I keep saying I'm going to help you reduce your error. What does it mean? Cicero knew it 2,000 years ago. To err is human. It's what we do. It's almost our natural state, right? Even as recently as, I'm going to be careful saying this in a room full of HR people, but there were times within the last few decades where the idea was if we just hired smarter people, they wouldn't make mistakes. Cicero knew this 2,000 years ago. That's not the case. What we need to do is mitigate and capture these errors while they're small and inconsequential before they lead to an error of consequence, certainly an error of catastrophe. So I'm going to address a norm. And that is, if I were to shadow you for a week at your place of work, what would I pick up on? Things that aren't in your standard operating procedures or in your manuals, but what would I just pick up on? On the way that you do, the way you do business, at Color Art, say. What would I pick up on? These are our norms. And then eventually, we're going to have to talk about drift. And what is that? The gradual departure of an intended course of action due to external factors. That's a bit of a NASA nerdy definition. I'll tell you what drift really means. It's letting our standards slide just a little. And let me tell you, what's the most insidious thing that happens when we let our standards slide just a little? Nothing bad happens. You get away with it, right? So the person who perpetrated it says, see, I knew nothing bad was going to happen. I told you it's fine, and it is fine. And then we let our standards slide a little more, and nothing bad happens. This little line up here is drift, getting away from our intended course of action, getting away with compliant with our manuals or our SOPs. And it's so dangerous when we accept it. Nothing bad happens. See, I told you, we're fine. Scientists call this the normalization of deviance. So how do we combat drift? I don't think that you want people in your workplace like I don't. I don't want these mindless robots just following the SOP, not bringing new innovative stuff to the table. I want you to encourage your people, if they come up with a new and innovative way of doing something that's a little bit outside the bounds of our standard operating procedures, let's kick that up the chain. Have everybody analyze it. And if management likes it, let's make that the new standard. Because this normalization of deviance works in reverse as well. Our people are bettering the process. And they call that the normalization of excellence. Always looking for a better way to innovate and bring new things to the table. So, how do I rely on not making mistakes? Because oftentimes, like I said, when we're making a mistake on the job, we don't even realize it, right? We don't know it's happening until it's too late. So what do I rely on the most? My team. When I strap into this $85 million F-18 Super Hornet, built where? St. Louis. The first voice I hear is that of my crew chief. He or she plugs their headset into the nose wheel well and starts giving me an update of this 22-person pit crew that's going on underneath my airplane. All these people are checking the engines, the avionics, the electronics, the weaponry. And once they pass the go, no-go to the crew chief, she salutes me and passes me off to the flight deck crew. Now they're going to taxi me around 4.4 acres of sovereign U.S. territory on the deck of this aircraft carrier and hook me to a catapult. This team will catapult me off the front so I can start heading towards the theater of combat. I'm communicating now with a huge Boeing 707 AWACS controller from the Air Force, kind of my airborne military air traffic controllers. They're putting me in contact with Navy SEALs on the ground, telling me where the friendly forces are, where the threats are, what I need to do with my ordnance. This huge orchestration of people, I call them all my co-pilots. They're all right there with me in that cockpit. Not because I have a split personality, but because I rely on them. But who do I rely on the most? My wingman. We never go anywhere alone as a fighter pilot. We always have at least 2 jets, 2, 4, 8, or even 16 wingmen, all pressing on the same mission. You watch my back, I watch yours. And we have this culture where it's okay to call each other out on mistakes. If you call me out on a mistake in the cockpit, I don't get defensive and say, yeah, but let me explain why I'm doing that. I say, thanks for keeping me in check. I need to straighten up and fly right. Have your people encouraging each other to call each other out on mistakes, regardless of boss, CEO, whatever. And it brings up this air of transparency and vulnerability, so everybody feels more like a part of the team. Let's get into how we do it.